Maplewood Hills is a small, peaceful town with oak-lined streets and classic homes surrounded by lush gardens. To outsiders, Maplewood Hills seems like the ideal place to live and raise a family. But behind that perfect exterior lie dark secrets, secrets waiting to be uncovered. At the heart of the town is Emily Sanders, a 49-year-old woman known for her friendliness and dedication. Emily is an excellent real estate agent, not only skilled at her job, but always willing to help others. Her house on Birch Street is always welcoming, filled with the warm atmosphere and the scent of homemade pastries. However, beneath the surface of her seemingly happy life, her family was not as perfect as it appeared. Michael Sanders, Emily's second husband, is 10 years younger than her. Recently, he had grown distant, often using work as an excuse to come home late and paying less attention to his wife. Their relationship had gradually become cold, leaving Emily feeling lonely and lost. Yet, to everyone else, they were still seen as a successful couple, but Emily knew that something in her marriage was slowly falling apart. Amanda, Emily's daughter from her previous marriage, is an ambitious medical student. She and her mother used to be very close, but recently, Amanda had grown more distant. She was often away, and when she was home, she was cold toward her mother. Emily consoled herself that it was only the stress of studying, but deep down, she sensed that something was wrong. Family tensions began to rise, and no one in the small town of Maplewood Hills could have predicted that the family's secrets would lead to a terrible tragedy. One September morning, everything would unravel when Emily Sanders was found dead. That morning, the gentle September sun bathed Birch Street in a soft light, and everything seemed peaceful. But inside the Sanders home, tragedy awaited. At 7:45 a.m., Amanda Sanders entered the living room and saw her mother, Emily, lying still on the sofa. At first, she thought her mother was just sleeping, but her skin was pale and her body was motionless. A glass of iced tea sat untouched nearby, and the room was eerily quiet. Amanda called out to her mother, but there was no response. She rushed over, grabbed her mother's hand, and felt the coldness. Her heart raced, and her hands trembled as she frantically dialed 911. "My mother isn't breathing. Please come quickly," she screamed, her voice cracking with panic. Soon after, the sound of ambulance sirens echoed down the street, but for Amanda, time seemed to stretch endlessly. Paramedics rushed into the house and examined Emily, but there were no signs of life. After a few minutes of resuscitation efforts, Emily Sanders was declared dead at 8:15 a.m. Initially, it was thought that she might have suffered a heart attack, a reasonable assumption for someone of Emily's age. But something made one of the paramedics pause, the glass of iced tea on the table. It was still full, condensation glistening around the rim, and it seemed untouched. This small detail felt off, and they decided to keep the glass for further investigation. When Detective Grace Thompson arrived at the scene, she immediately noticed the oddities. The living room was too perfect, with no signs of a struggle. Everything was neatly arranged, from the magazines on the table to the faint scent of lavender in the air. It all seemed too peaceful for a sudden death. Amanda sat outside, her eyes vacant, unable to process what had just happened. Meanwhile, Detective Thompson ordered a full forensic examination, paying particular attention to the glass of tea. She had a strong sense that something was very wrong in that room and that a crime might have taken place. When Emily Sanders' autopsy report arrived, Detective Grace Thompson felt a significant shift in the case. Emily had not died from a heart attack, as initially suspected, but had been poisoned with a rare toxin, aconite. This substance, also known as monk's hood or devil's helmet, is an extremely potent poison capable of causing paralysis and death within hours of ingestion. This discovery complicated the case. Immensely, Emily had been murdered. Detective Thompson immediately gathered her team to start the investigation. The first suspects were naturally the two closest people to the victim, Michael Sanders, Emily's husband, and Amanda, her daughter. Both were overcome with grief, but Thompson knew that sorrow never ruled out guilt. Michael Sanders, the younger husband, looked devastated when he arrived at the police station for questioning. He recounted fond memories of his wife, of the happy life they had shared, but also admitted that they had faced difficulties in recent times. However, when Thompson pressed deeper into the nature of his relationship with Emily, Michael became defensive. He said that he had been spending too much time at work lately, which had caused a rift in their marriage. Michael also had a solid alibi for the morning of Emily's death. He had been in an online meeting at the office. His colleagues and the office security camera confirmed his presence at that time. Amanda, who had discovered her mother's body, was trembling and confused during her interview with Thompson. She insisted that she had no idea who might have wanted to harm her mother and described her as a kind-hearted woman who always helped others. However, when Thompson mentioned Michael, Amanda became evasive. She was reluctant to discuss her relationship with her stepfather, raising more questions for the investigation. With neither Michael nor Amanda providing crucial information, Thompson decided to widen the scope of the investigation, delving into Emily's relationships. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues all confirmed that Emily was a kind woman with no known enemies. However, when Thompson asked about Emily's recent mental state, some began to share that Emily had seemed more anxious and stressed than usual. One of Emily's close friends, Martha, revealed that Emily had secretly met with a lawyer just weeks before her death. It turned out that Emily had changed her will. Instead of leaving her estate to her husband and daughter, she had decided to transfer everything to her sister, Julia. This revelation shocked Detective Thompson, as it opened up the possibility of financial motives behind the crime. Thompson began to suspect that the change in the will might have been the reason someone wanted Emily dead, but the critical question was, who in the family knew about the will? Did Michael or Amanda know? Or was Julia, the beneficiary, somehow involved? With all these suspicions swirling, Thompson pressed on with the investigation, convinced that the complex family dynamics held the key to solving the mysterious death of Emily Sanders. Detective Grace Thompson's investigation began to gain significant traction as more clues came to light. Many of the Sanders family's neighbors and friends started sharing strange observations about the relationship between Michael and Amanda. At first, no one thought much of their closeness, since Amanda was Emily's daughter from a previous marriage, and Michael had behaved like a good stepfather. But as rumors of a secret relationship between Michael and Amanda began to spread, Thompson's suspicions grew stronger. A neighbor recalled seeing Michael and Amanda meeting at odd hours, sometimes late at night. At first, I thought they were just having a private father-daughter talk, one person shared, but then I realized something was off. The way they looked at each other, it wasn't like a normal family relationship. Detective Thompson decided to investigate the relationship more closely. She reached out to staff at a small cafe on the outskirts of Maplewood Hills, where Michael and Amanda had been frequent visitors. One of the cafe owners, when questioned, remembered their secretive meetings. They came here every week, always choosing a table in the back, and they seemed very close. At first, I thought they were father and daughter, but their behavior made me suspicious. This information prompted Thompson to examine Michael and Amanda's phones and computers. What she found confirmed her suspicions. Michael and Amanda had been having a secret affair for over a year. Their text messages were full of insinuations about their clandestine meetings and even contained bitter remarks about Emily. The conversations harbored a growing resentment toward Emily, and in one instance, they even discussed how she was standing in the way of their happiness. A recent text message, sent just days before Emily's death, carried a chilling implication. It's almost over. Everything will be over soon. Detective Thompson now had a clearer understanding of the motive. Michael and Amanda had conspired to eliminate Emily so they could be together without any obstacles. But the question remained, who had actually carried out the deed? To get to the bottom of it, Thompson decided to re-interview Amanda. This time, she focused on probing Amanda's relationship with Michael. At first, Amanda continued to deny the truth, but when the detective presented the incriminating messages, Amanda broke down in tears and confessed everything. Amanda admitted that she had fallen in love with Michael, and they had been having an affair for some time. Their relationship blossomed as Michael became more distant from Emily. Amanda felt like she was not just a neglected daughter, but the only person who truly understood and comforted Michael. As she spoke, Amanda revealed her fear and guilt about what had happened. She claimed that Michael was the one who had instigated the plan to get rid of Emily. Initially, she hesitated and didn't want to harm her mother, but Michael's persuasion and her blind love led her to gradually agree to the scheme. Michael had researched the poison aconite, and he was the one who proposed using it because it was difficult to detect and could easily be disguised as a heart attack. Amanda confessed that she had helped Michael get close to Emily's tea, but she tried to justify herself by saying that she had only done it because she was manipulated and pressured by her misguided love for Michael. However, what Amanda didn't know was that Thompson had found a particularly chilling message. If she's gone, we'll have everything. I promise I'll take care of you, and there will be no one left in our way. This message suggested that Amanda also harbored dark intentions. The investigation then shifted to focus on Michael. Thompson believed that Michael was the mastermind, using Amanda's love to turn her into his accomplice in the murder. She decided to dig deeper into Michael's past to see how he had orchestrated the crime. With the information from Amanda's confession, Detective Grace Thompson dove deeper into Michael's role in the assassination of Emily. She began to uncover more about how Michael had carefully planned to acquire aconite and carry out the murder with cold, calculated precision. The next major discovery came from an email hidden on Michael's personal computer. In this email, Michael had communicated with an anonymous source about purchasing aconite, an extremely difficult substance to acquire, especially legally. Detailed instructions on how to mix and administer the poison to make someone's death appear as a sudden heart attack were also found in Michael's inbox. Detective Thompson realized that Michael had been planning Emily's murder for a long time, and it was not an impulsive act. He chose aconite, not only for its deadly nature, but also because it could mimic heart attack symptoms, something that would make the murder appear to be a natural medical event. However, Michael's downfall came from his overconfidence in thinking that every detail had been perfectly executed. As the investigation continued, Thompson found further evidence linking Michael to the purchase of aconite through an underground marketplace on the internet. Through messages and transactions, she discovered that Michael had paid a large sum of money for the poison, confirming the theory that he had been planning this for a long time. This showed that Michael not only exploited Amanda's blind love, but also used her as a tool in his scheme. Detective Thompson then reviewed the conversations between Michael and Amanda. The messages Amanda had sent to Michael before Emily's death, including one that said, "We have to act now. There's no turning back," revealed her active participation in the plan. Although Amanda admitted she had been manipulated, the evidence of her deliberate involvement in poisoning her mother could not be overlooked. Amanda had agreed to the plan and played a crucial role in carrying it out. Moreover, Another significant discovery was that Michael had purchased a large life insurance policy for Emily just 3 months before her death. This policy was worth a substantial amount, with Michael named as the primary beneficiary. This not only raised suspicions about financial motives, but also reinforced the reason why he was determined to get rid of Emily. In many murder cases motivated by money, the motive often comes from inheritance or life insurance payouts, and this case was no exception. The second interrogation of Michael became intense. At first, he maintained a calm demeanor, insisting that he was innocent and had nothing to do with his wife's death. But when Detective Thompson presented the evidence from the emails, text messages, and financial transactions, Michael began to lose his composure. His once confident facade crumbled as the details of his meticulously planned murder were revealed piece by piece. "You thought you could hide everything, didn't you?" Thompson challenged. "You thought that by using aconite, Emily's death would look like a natural accident. But you left a trail from the emails to the bank transactions." Michael remained silent, staring at Thompson without responding. His cold gaze had now been replaced by desperation, as he realized there was no escape from the law. Finally, after hours of interrogation and being unable to refute the overwhelming evidence, Michael confessed to being the one who had planned Emily's murder. However, he continued to blame Amanda, claiming that she had pushed him to carry out the plan and that they both knew Emily had to disappear for them to be happy together. Michael admitted that he had researched aconite thoroughly, knowing that it was a rare and hard to detect poison, and he had used it in Emily's tea that morning. Amanda had been the one who prepared the tea and placed it next to her mother without hesitation. Both of them believed that no one would discover the truth and that they would be free after Emily's death. But Thompson knew the truth was never that simple. Although Michael had confessed his role in the crime, he still tried to make Amanda the scapegoat. This raised a critical question: who had truly initiated the plan from the beginning? Was Amanda being used, or was she a willing accomplice in this horrifying crime? The investigation would not stop there, but the most important pieces of the puzzle had begun to fall into place. Michael Sanders, the husband, adulterer, and murderer, had finally been unmasked. As the case progressed, Detective Grace Thompson realized that it wasn't just Michael and Amanda involved in the murder, but also the shadowy presence of Julia, Emily's sister. Julia Sanders, who had been named as the beneficiary in Emily's revised will, became a new suspect. However, not because she had directly participated in the murder, but because her greed and manipulation had pushed the situation further. Julia had a strained relationship with Emily, and this became clearer when Thompson began examining financial transactions between Julia and Amanda. Through the investigation, Thompson discovered that Julia had learned about Michael and Amanda's affair months before Emily's death. Instead of reporting it to Emily or the police, Julia saw an opportunity for personal gain. Julia approached Amanda with a simple but threatening request. She would keep the secret about Amanda and Michael's affair if Amanda paid her a large sum of money. Amanda, panicked and worried that her mother would discover the truth, agreed to pay Julia. However, the initial payment was just the beginning, and Julia's demands grew larger. She didn't just want money, she wanted power within the Sanders family. As a result, the relationship between Amanda and Julia became increasingly tense. Amanda felt trapped between protecting her secret relationship with Michael and dealing with Julia's ever-growing demands. This pressure eventually pushed Amanda to the point where she believed eliminating her mother was the only way to resolve everything. Julia, although not directly involved in the murder plot, had indirectly driven Amanda to the brink. Evidence of extortion was found through bank transactions and messages between Julia and Amanda. Julia had received large sums of money from Amanda, which now became a critical motive in the investigation. When Detective Thompson confronted Julia, she initially denied all accusations, but when faced with the concrete evidence, Julia began to confess her role in exploiting the situation for financial gain. Julia never expected that her blackmailing would indirectly lead to her sister's death. While she wasn't the mastermind behind the murder, her pressure on Amanda had contributed to the tragic outcome. In the end, Julia was charged with extortion and faced legal consequences. Her greed and cruelty had played a significant role in deepening the family's tragedy, and she had to pay the price for her selfish actions. Although she hadn't been directly involved in the murder, Julia had played a pivotal role in pushing the family to the breaking point. As Detective Grace Thompson continued her investigation, the final pieces of the case began to fall into place, and everything became clearer. Michael Sanders, who had once seemed like a loving husband, was revealed to be the mastermind behind Emily's death. Although Amanda had confessed to her role in the murder, Thompson knew that Michael was the true architect of the crime, using Amanda as a pawn to carry out his plan. After gathering enough evidence, Thompson decided to summon Michael for questioning once more. This time, she had no intention of showing mercy. She began the interrogation with a firm tone, presenting all the evidence that she and her team had gathered, from the email transactions for the purchase of aconite, the text messages between Michael and Amanda, to the suspicious financial transactions linked to Emily's life insurance policy. Everything pointed to Michael as the orchestrator of the entire plot. At first, Michael maintained his confident demeanor, insisting that he had no knowledge of the plan to kill Emily and that Amanda had acted alone. But when Detective Thompson presented the emails detailing the purchase of aconite, Michael's attitude began to shift. He realized there was no way out. "You thought you could get away with it, didn't you?" Thompson asked, her eyes fixed on every movement Michael made. "You thought that by using Amanda as a shield, you'd never be found out?" Michael stayed silent, his face growing more tense. Thompson pressed on. "We've found everything, Michael. Your emails, your messages with Amanda, and even your purchase of aconite to poison your wife. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a carefully calculated plan." Finally, under the unrelenting pressure of the evidence, Michael bowed his head and confessed to everything. He admitted that he had been planning to kill Emily for months, realizing that she had changed her will, transferring her entire estate to her sister Julia. Michael, who was facing financial difficulties, knew that if Emily died, he could collect the insurance money and continue living the luxurious life he had always craved. In his confession, Michael explained that he had researched aconite thoroughly, knowing that it was a rare and difficult to detect poison. He had seduced Amanda, who was madly in love with him, into helping him carry out the plan. Michael convinced Amanda that killing Emily was the only way they could be free to live together without any obstacles. Michael recounted how he had meticulously planned everything, from purchasing the aconite to directing Amanda on how to poison her mother without raising suspicion. He believed that no one would ever discover the truth, and that he would continue to live comfortably after Emily's death. When Detective Thompson asked why he had chosen such a cruel method, Michael simply replied, "Because I deserve a better life. Emily was no longer the woman I wanted to be with. She was in the way." Michael's confession brought the darkest parts of the case to light. He had not only exploited Amanda's emotions, but had also carefully plotted to make her the one who bore all the responsibility for the murder. However, Michael had underestimated the fact that his greed and arrogance would lead to his complete downfall. After Michael's confession, he was immediately arrested and charged with murder. The image of a loving husband was shattered, and Maplewood Hills would never forget his crime. For Detective Thompson, after months of intense investigation, the case was finally closed. But for her, it wasn't a complete victory. She knew that the case had left lasting scars on everyone involved, especially Amanda, a young woman who had been drawn into a spiral of crime and deceit. Michael Sanders, the cold-blooded murderer, now faced a life sentence, and everything he had once possessed had crumbled because of his greed and cruelty. After Michael's arrest and the revelation of the full truth, Maplewood Hills, once a peaceful and idyllic small town, would never be the same again. The tragic events had shaken the entire community, making people realize that even in a seemingly perfect place, dark secrets could lurk beneath the surface. Amanda Sanders, once a bright young woman with a promising future in medicine, now faced the severe consequences of her wrong choices. Although she had been manipulated by Michael and drawn into his web of crime, the law did not excuse her role in the murder. Amanda was sentenced to 25 years in prison with the possibility of parole after serving a portion of her sentence. In court, the once radiant and full of life young woman was now a picture of sorrow and defeat, not only for losing her mother, but also for the complete destruction of her own life. Julia Sanders, Emily's sister, who had exploited the situation to extort money from Amanda, did not escape punishment either. Although she had not directly participated in the murder, her actions in exploiting the family crisis for personal gain led to her being convicted of extortion. Julia received a lighter sentence, but her reputation and future were irreparably damaged. As for Michael, he not only lost his family, but also his honor and freedom. The life sentence without parole was the ultimate price for the ruthless plan he had orchestrated. He would spend the rest of his days in prison, facing the consequences of the devastation he had caused to those around him. Maplewood Hills gradually returned to its usual rhythm of life, but the memory of the case remained, like a scar that would never fully heal. People would always remember Emily, the kind-hearted woman who loved her family, and the murder that forever changed the face of the town. As the case was closed and the full truth revealed, Detective Grace Thompson felt both relief and unease. For months, she had poured her heart and soul into the investigation, determined to find the person responsible for Emily Sanders' death. Although justice had been served, she couldn't help but reflect on the aftermath of the case. For Thompson, this was more than just a murder case. It was a testament to how greed, deception, and betrayal could destroy even the strongest family relationships. She recalled the early days when she first stepped into Emily's home, a house that exuded warmth and love. But beneath that perfect surface lay dark schemes, selfish desires, and emotional instability that no one could have predicted. As Grace looked back on the investigation, she realized that Michael wasn't the only criminal. Amanda, although manipulated by Michael, had made grave mistakes by agreeing to participate in the murder. Julia, with her greed, had also played a role in pushing Amanda toward a path of no return. And even Emily, though the victim, may not have realized that her unintentional actions in distancing herself from those around her had made them feel neglected and abandoned. Thompson also reflected on her own role in the investigation. She knew that as a detective, her job was to uncover the truth and enforce justice. But seeing the lives destroyed, especially Amanda's, a young woman with potential who had fallen due to love and weakness, left her with a deep sense of regret. What if Amanda had never met Michael? Would things have turned out differently? What if Emily had been more attuned to her daughter's feelings? Could the tragedy have been avoided? Grace understood that some questions would never have answers. Life was unpredictable, and every decision carried unavoidable consequences. Her job was to pick up the pieces afterward, but this case had left her with a profound lesson. Sometimes, the greatest wounds come from the people we love and trust the most. As she left Maplewood Hills, Thompson knew that the Emily Sanders case would remain etched in her mind. It was a reminder that even in small, seemingly perfect communities, darkness could hide beneath the surface. And her duty, like that of every detective, was to keep searching for the truth, no matter how painful that truth might be.